2014 is why my journey started, right, in terms of sales ops. And it has been an evolutionary phase, because at each phase I learned. I failed, I learned, I improvised, I failed again, but I failed better. So today I'm much more grown than what I was maybe 5 years ago.
So, man, like one of the coolest things about RevOps is that people normally take different paths into the space. And that means they can have really different approaches, like you said, of solving problems. So what's your philosophy in RevOps, and how has your life impacted what that is?
So let me just take a step back and tell you what has been my sort of background. Over the experience that I've had, over the last most 1.5 decades and plus, I've been on both sides of the table. I've been an entrepreneur for 4 years. I've been in brick and mortar. I've been in retail, as I said, with Tesco. And now I am into a completely tech sort of an organization where you're not talking any brick and mortar. There is no interaction as such with the ground. But having said that, I think the diaspora and the spectrum that I have seen, it makes me really proud to say that, I have understood sort of the nuances of how to maybe set up a system from scratch. What is it that is really required? And, I'm a thorough ops person, because I have been into business ops with Tesco. I was into managing, budgets and finances for the organization that I was part of. Post that, when I talk about entrepreneurship, I set up a, workshop on my own from scratch, built it up, made losses, made it commercially profitable, and then shut down. So I've seen a full cycle. And that was, I think, by far one of the best ever memories and experiences that I'm going to take away in my life. And what it has really taught me is, there will be different stakeholders, and different stakeholders will have different sort of expectations. But how do you manage it is where the data, the fact that comes in. And ops plays a real crucial role out there. If you know what data, so there are situations where you will get data, there are situations you will not get data, right? But you need to be able to foresee a few steps ahead and sort of understand, how can I structure this problem and get some data points which can help me solve some really meaningful problems for the business. So, that's what really drives me from sitting in. So, no demeaning the fact that, sales reps do a fabulous job, because that's the engine of any organization as such. But the output out there is very clearly measurable. You have a quota, and you have a target to run towards. You know exactly how did you perform. But for an ops person, being a reporting side of the business, creating the data systems, designing the go-to-market, supporting the business with tools, etc. What's really important is, can I create a few levers for the business and give it back to the reps who, actually need it, which in a sense makes a magnified impact. It does not stick to just one person. And that's what I am really passionate about, and that's what really drives me.
Love that. You're all about creating or really turning the needle for your reps, measuring those levers. What's the motivation there, Aman? I mean, do you just love salespeople, or is there something deeper and more fundamental?
Yeah, more fundamental. Yeah. So again, I'm sort of stepping back to my entrepreneurial days. So there were days when I was making losses. So I was spending 12, 13, 14 hours, almost 7 days a week, but I was not getting an answer in terms of, how do I cut my cost down? It was not happening. And I was a new entrant into the market. But, 1 month of shutdown, a lot of interaction with folks on the ground. And that's where I realized that God lies in details and not at the top, right? So I spoke to them. I got to understand some nuances, because, those are folks who have been in that industry for 10 years, maybe a decade, 14 years, 15 years, and they have the experience that I need to understand. And from there, I applied some common sense and some experience and built out a strategy, which actually helped us turn around within 30 days. And I'm seriously telling you, hands on my heart, it happened in 30 days.
That's a really great point to bring up. Let's link this to forecasting, and
sure.
Let's talk about the relationship between forecasting and strategy. What's your fundamental philosophy there, Aman?
Yeah. So I think, revenue is important for any organization, right? But what's really more important is everyone is chasing how predictable can I be? How should I do this? But the point is how really to do it is basically understand the nuances ground up. Look into a rep's life. Can I make his life easier? Can I understand today what are the data points that we are creating? And if not, can we improvise? Can we say, here are the few data points that I would want to structure into our tool and, infrastructure or ecosystem, so to say, which can give me meaningful insight. So, where I'm coming from is, imagine, you're creating this database over a timeline, or and my skill basically lies into understanding patterns. Now, what do I understand patterns on? I cannot do that on behavior because that's very sort of still fluid. But if I make it tangible and I say, can we capture some data over a timeline and then see how is that timeline and that behavior moving? Can I get some pattern amongst the group that we are looking at? Is there a set of group which is acting similar or otherwise? And then that becomes really meaningful to give back to the business.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah. So that's where you're using the data and you're using that to actually influence the strategy and then even the tactics that will come from that.
It has to be informed decision. Because see, today when we are talking about the SaaS business, what is SaaS? We are basically saying, I'm going to integrate all your processes into one. I'm going to integrate all your data sources into one, because today you're having the pain of your data sitting into different silos. You're not able to connect. And the emotional pain is, oops, I'm not able to do it because I have like 5 systems to talk to. The rational pain is, because I have 5 systems to talk to, it takes so much of a time. I'm not able to gather a one view. And because of that not happening, I'm somewhere not feeling uneasy to meet my KPI, which is growth, right? And that's where I'm saying, if we are selling this to the world, why don't we look outside in for the same objective that we are creating a lot of data? And if we are not creating a lot of data, why don't we inject the same thought process? We create that data and then understand it for ourselves to give it back to the business. And that's where I see creating levers very, very tangible I have in mind, which I have actually implemented and worked. So I think, that's where the success lies.
Really love the fact you bring up the pain there. You talked about SaaS in general and tech in general being pain, but we know in the ops community, like tracking those patterns you described can have pains as well. So what are the common pains in ops tracking these patterns? And Aman, what have you done about those?
So I'd say, the biggest pain is, the moment I go to a rep and I'm going to talk about, I am going to track you on XYZ metric. My philosophy, never ever use the word called track.
Okay.
That's a negative connotation, right? Let us be positive and with a real intent of helping him out. What we can say is, let's build this data together. Let's build the infrastructure together. Because at the end of the day, you are the one who is driving this data. So you are the owner. So I want your sort of involvement into the process, which is basically empowering you into the process. And then it becomes more of a partnership that rather than, me being a messenger from the management and, shooting downwards. That's not what we should do. Yeah. We should definitely go ground up.
Yeah. We need to empower reps. We need to look at what they're doing and help them close more deals based on the patterns that they're exhibiting.
Yeah, they need to be educated first in terms of what are they generating, what data could be meaningful to them. How can I really look into the nitty-gritties of solving their day-to-day problems? And based on that, if we can string through the data, understand the pattern, because understanding the pattern is my job. I have been hired for that. And if I can flow this insight back to the rep, back to the management, all of them, create the level of transparency, I think it's going to be a collaborative effort towards meeting the objective for the org. Yeah.
That's a really, really good point. I love what you say there, creating transparency. It's something everyone's aiming to do. People are different stages of that journey. Talk to me about getting trust in the data, in the forecast, and getting a transparent organization who can look at this. Just talk to me about what you think and your experiences are there, Aman.
So I will take you back to a timeline about 2014, 7 years back. which is where I was sort of introduced to sales ops. And the primary reason I was taken as a sales ops head, the first person to be hired for sales ops for a growth stage startup, was that, I had, seen the cycle of a business to build it up from scratch and of course shut it down. But then, it gives a complete, experience altogether. And it was extremely difficult for, it's, and I use this in a lot of meetings and forums, saying sales ops or revops is something like a balanced diet, right? And the sales folks love a lot of pizza, love a lot of, what is good for the tongue. So it will always be a fight, but I think there is a real balance that we should aim to reach at, and which is where we sort of come in. So in terms of creating trust, basically empower them, work with them. My role should not be, calling out that I'm going to track you. It's about building an ecosystem, and you are a part of that. Rather, you're not a part of that, you're a heart of that, because you are creating this. You are the engine for me. I have to give you, in the real sense, that ownership, that sort of a respect, because you're driving my sales engine. You're driving my growth. And now imagine, when I'm talking about growth, of course, by meeting the quotas, you're driving your growth. But as a team, when you meet the quota, you're driving the growth for the company, which in turn is paying my salary, driving my growth. Now just see how it is sort of stringing together, right? So I think that's where I see, trust being given. Initially, you will have pain. You will have to pursue a lot. You will have to take a lot of negative, bullcrap, man. You are creating a lot of cumbersome processes, which I don't have time for. I have to meet my goal. But, where we can break the ice is, can I snatch away 10 minutes of your non-value add in a day and automate a small piece of your task? That's where you begin. And sort of echo it, make it larger and larger as much as possible. So eat away as much of non-value add from the process. And I think that's where you will start, getting that. And the moment then so try and do a pilot. Don't go all. Try and do a pilot. Select a few folks. And I think towards that, what I had done is I identified a few folks who match with me professionally, who understand what I'm trying to say, but at the same time, do I have a personal rapport? Sit over a coffee and try and understand what's happening in life in general and make that bridge. So basically that opens the door of pain. Yeah. And when you share this, thought process in a very informal manner, I think the acceptance and the adoption will be far, far higher.
It's almost like selling to the reps, isn't it? And creating a process, is going to help them.
It is indeed. And I think this is one of the most challenging jobs I can think of, actually.
Okay. I want to go back to what you said earlier, because it's a good one. We're talking about analyzing patterns. In the rep level, this case, this is what we're talking about here. Yeah. Talk to me about your process for doing this.
So, what I have been able to do is, there are 3 specific things or levers, if I would say, that I want to give to the rep. And imagine a scenario, if a rep knows what is his engagement on the opportunities that are sitting in his funnel, and break the funnel down into a smaller problem, saying top of the funnel, what's happening, bottom of the funnel, in the opportunity funnel, what's happening, what's the engagement looking like, do I have control? The next is, do I have control on the average age of the opportunity sitting in each of the buckets, right? And the third is, do I have control over the progression? Meaning, on the top of the funnel, you may have multiple stages, maybe 3, 4, whatever it is. On the bottom, you may have multiple stages, but how's my progression meter looking like? Is it moving? So basically look at all of these 3 together, saying, if I'm engaging enough, is it giving me enough progression? And if it is giving me enough progression, is my age within that bucket of the funnel that we are looking at, is it under sort of tight control? And as I see it, no matter what your sales cycle is, from an opportunity point of view, I think 30 to 40% of the time within the sales cycle, I think an op should sit into the top of the funnel. And I think the rest of the time, which is the larger share, maybe 50, 60%, should be in the bottom of the funnel. And with that sort of ideation, if you can sort of see yourself measuring with these leading indicators coming into you 52 times a year, which is basically weekly, you have a real solid control on what we are doing. And a lot of things can be done maybe in week 2 or week 3 or week 4 instead of thinking about at week 10.
Yeah. So doing things sooner before a problem arises and pivoting quickly.
Yeah. And it's not only doing things sooner, it has to be very, very pointed. The audience has to understand what kind of liver are we talking about.
Yeah.
Go deep into explaining to a rep level, if required, that this is what your metric looks like. This is where I'm saying let's say my team is, and this is, let's say, that's where the org is. So benchmark myself against the team, or probably the geo that I belong to, and benchmark myself against the complete org and see whether I'm running too fast, whether I'm running too slow, and course correct accordingly.
Yeah, course correction, name of the game.
Yeah.
Aman, if you were in a room full of RevOps, sales ops superstars, what would you ask them?
I think the $1 million question, which everyone is trying to solve, yes, it is revenue intelligence, but how do you drive adoption faster? That'll be my question. Because I do understand, we can organize spiffs, we can do behavioral awards, rewards, whatever we can think of. We can think about what I said, build the data, show it to them, make a pilot, and then go larger. But the problem that I'm still thinking about is how can we shrink down this cycle? If we can shrink down this cycle, then in effect, I'm looking at quicker onboarding, quicker process throughput. Yeah.
Just help me be really clear here. The cycle of, and explain it again, Aman, the cycle of.
So basically the cycle of me, reaching out to the rep, educating him, that's the process, how to drive the adoption. And then that comes into your live world, which actually impacts my bottom line and top line. So the whole process today, as I say, has taken, as I said, 2014 is why my journey started, right? In terms of sales ops. And it has been an evolutionary phase, because at each phase I learned, I failed, I learned, I improvised, I failed again, but I failed better. Is what I'm saying. So today I'm much more grown than what I was maybe 5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.